Welcome to the Goat Rodeo Podcast, where we talk about defense technology, innovation, Silicon Valley, at the crossroads of Trump 2.0 and everything in between. I'm your host, Garrett Smith, joined this week by regular co-host Dave Caudill, fellow Reveal technology employee, go-to-marketeer, and all-around ninja. And then this week, instead of our normal co-host Simon Kuhn, we are glad to welcome the one and only Noah Sheinbaum to the pod and to the community, and we're just psyched to have you, Noah. Hi.
I did not realize that I was replacing Simon Kuhn. I am sorry to everybody in advance. That is a terrible substitute.
Full time. No. This is a permanent replacement. You're gonna have to. Yeah.
My love for Capitol Hill, for Congress, for all things legislative is going to shine through bright in this conversation. But
yeah, that's good.
I'm worried for the future of Reveal now. Simon, come back soon.
So, just looking at each of our backgrounds, Dave has an instrument behind him that he does not play. I've got an instrument behind me that I sometimes kind of play. Noah, what is that, a Joint Strike Fighter? What is that, a Predator? What do you operate any of those things in your background?
Well, let me see. I don't know. Maybe a
or is that
tip
F-35?
Of an F-20. It might be an F-2022, but the answer is definitively no. If it has an F in front of it, I haven't touched it, and nor have I touched the drone. Thank you for starting exactly where I wake up every morning, Garrett, which is with the doom of being an absolute interloper in a community for which I have not earned my place. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
That is not at all true. You've earned your place. You've operated. Now you're a commentator and dare I say a luminary, but you're certainly part of the community around.
I just love hanging out with you, man. It's fun hanging out with people who inspire you every day, and I think that's what I get to do.
So for those of you who don't know, Noah does all kinds of stuff in the defense technology upstart community. He comes from an operator background and has been a part of some notable startups in the space, but he regularly posts podcast interviews with folks across that innovation ecosystem. And I'll just say that I'm a somewhat regular listener, and I take really good, positive, lessons from every single one of your conversations on Crossing the Valley. So thank you, Noah, for everything you're doing.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And look, I feel like this is, we had you guys over for dinner. Garrett and Dave have been on Crossing the Valley. Check it out. It was an awesome episode. They got real candid, real transparent. And now I feel like I get to visit you in your home. So I will try to be a polite house guest.
Actually, the watchword over here in the Goat Rodeo landscape is impolite. So please get as impolite as you possibly can be.
Well, it's funny, Garrett. This is probably the most polite anyone's going to see me for a little while, because we got something big coming up. You're going to be a part of it. I'm psyched. Yeah. Should we talk about next week?
Let's talk about it, because I'm excited. And when you and I first started talking about Defense Gameday, which I think is what it's called, or Game Day Defense
Gameday. You got it, man. Defense
Gameday. So when we first started talking about it was actually like hey, let's just let's talk on the periphery and of this upcoming event, Apex Defense in National Harbor, Maryland, next week, 23-24 April. For those of you who are interested in tuning in, but I thought it was just going to be like a collegial sidebar. We'll do an hour-long recording or whatever on the periphery of this event. And then I found out last week this has actually become a fully branded, platform that you have now, harnessed sponsors for and everything else. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, we went ahead and launched a show. This is the mental illness that I call entrepreneurship, right? Like, I think what we saw, and actually, before I dive in, Dave, let me ask you something. If you could craft the perfect defense event, what would it have? What would it look like?
Oh man, the perfect defense event.
Beer helmets. Beer helmets.
First and foremost, the beneficiary, right? The actual user. Probably the person with the authority to build or buy things on behalf of that user. Probably the scientific community or the industry community that's capable of producing or solving that problem for the user. And yeah, it would probably be not in a building or in an office somewhere. It would probably be on a range where the work's happening. For something that looks like the actual user's problem. And to Garrett's point, yeah, it probably also has some beer.
Noah, if I could butt in here, my perfect defense event would be 2 or 3 days long, 8 hours of stodgy programming, suits and ties, importantly, lanyards with, legacy prime sponsor logos on them, and maximum virtue signaling. If we could get that, that's my ideal. I woke up, from a dream about that last night.
This is perfect. I think I have a bridge to sell you, my friend. I think I have the perfect product for you. And I'm not going to name names, but if we talk after this call, I can get you a few tickets to a few dozen of them over the next 12 months. So look, this is not meant to be a shot at defense events, I think. But I've said before, and I still believe this, I think the best defense-related business to be in over the last decade, if you care about making money, is the events business. They print and they make you feel good. They put your name in lights. Sponsors, I think, I don't know how many deals they close, but I know that they feel good about it. The attendee experience, I will tell you, as somebody who has really only been on the attendee side, it's not great. It's not great. And Dave, you make decisions every day about how to allocate resources on your team. I don't know. Actually, I do kind of know. The reveal philosophy on this is maybe not to back up the Brinks truck to support event organizers for the most part.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Noah. Like the the low risk bets are definitely trade show planners, and then anybody that buys anybody that sells a Pelican case or similar, right? Those are the real winners in defense tech. The two constants. No secret. You're right. I was just in a resourcing meeting maybe half an hour ago where we were talking about how many bodies we're sending to each of these events. I make it no secret, like, I hate trade shows. I believe that they're mostly a waste of time. You're standing in a convention center with weak coffee and overpriced hotels and people who just want to scan your badge and move on. But there's sort of a catch, right? Like, if you're not there, you're sort of invisible. Everybody assumes that you're not real or you're not ready or you're not relevant. So you go. Because if for no other reason, I go to these things or I choose a focus list to go to, because you can rack up 20 face-to-face meetings that would have taken 3 months and, lots of plane trips to go and execute. But I think that really it's table stakes for credibility. Like, not because trade shows are magic, but because not being there can kill momentum. I hate responding to the text from like a government program management office saying, "Hey, Dave, I want to bring my boss by. What's your booth number?" And me saying, not only do I not care enough to go, I don't even care enough to have a booth or have somebody else go on my behalf.
Gotta be there. It's spot on, Dave. But that's the point. These things are not going away. I'm not starting a company to disrupt events and to end all defense. That's not it. I actually think there's immense potential there. We want to unlock it. So here's my take. The educational side, the informative side of these events would be so much better if it was just a little bit more entertaining. You guys talk about movies a lot of times here when you on Goat Rodeo. I love what y'all are doing. What's a great movie? It's either really, good, memorable, entertaining, funny, or really bad. You don't want to be in the middle. And so that's what we're going to do with Defense Gameday. We're either going to be really freaking funny and entertaining, or we are going to crash and burn so freaking hard that you're not going to be able to look away. That's what's going on.
Hell yeah.
You're gonna make trade shows fun?
We're making trade shows fun, and we're not even going to say
off,
again. We're not saying again. Make trade shows fun. Full stop. No again.
Noah, I know that we've committed. We're going to be on stage with you on Wednesday afternoon for one of the broadcasts on Defense Gameday. But tell us about that format. I mean, is it just a bunch of people bullshitting up there and trying to be funny? Because I'll be honest, I'm not a stand-up comedian like that. Chappelle, I ain't, right. What do you need?
You're selling yourself short, Garrett. You happen to be very charismatic. You're on my short list. So here's how we're thinking about it. Take the same people, put them in a different situation, give them different incentives, and you get a totally different result. And no, we're not talking about the Pentagon. We're talking about commentary. We're talking about content. I'm really, really fortunate in this. I've got two phenomenal partners and then a bunch of values aligned upstart companies that are, that want to be a part of this and shaking things up. One of my good buddy, Tennessee Edwards, is a Hollywood executive producer. He's made reality TV for the last 20 years. Like Tiny House Nation and Pawn Stars and Dumpster Wars, shows that kind of just redefined how you think about different parts of life that maybe seemed kind of boring. Like pawn shops weren't necessarily seen as like the be all end all of entertainment. They turned that on its head. And then our friends at Adams Not Bits, who have done an amazing job growing an audience around hard tech news. I mean, way worth thinking guys. About this. They're great guys.
We like those guys a lot. Also, those shows in Tennessee made me think differently about the History Channel being less a vector for history and more a vector for feel-good daytime TV.
All right, so
right?
I believe you can pull this off, Noah. I do.
Die trying, man. It's gonna be one of the other.
Or die trying. I'm looking forward to watching from the sidelines.
Spicy hot takes is what I'm looking for on current defense tech trends. Yeah,
you're gonna be. I'll tell you what. We'll give the people a small preview. I'm not gonna give it all away, but we'll give one preview. Okay. You guys are gonna be the Goat Rodeo takeover. It's going to be at the end of day one. We're actually going live in the arena during happy hour. So even if we're not that funny after 2 to 3 whiskeys, we'll be a little bit funnier. That's the goal, right? So we'll be live in the arena. You guys will be up there. Remember the show Around the Horn on ESPN? Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Kind of a little pardon the interruption, Around the Horn. We're going to have a couple of topics. Give everybody a few 15, 30 seconds to have some takes. We're going to score them at the end. The winner is going to be on a soapbox. And you're going to have 60 seconds unfiltered. Tell that audience whatever you want. But here's the thing. We're going to have a challenge booth. There's a challenge booth. Anybody from that audience can come up to that challenge booth and toss a challenge flag your way, and they can take you on head on. And if the referee decides they made a better point than you do, guess what? You're booted. They're taking your spot on stage, and away we go. So everybody's got to be on their A game. No slouching. No skipping the prep work. We're on. I'm
gonna have to drink some espresso, or maybe an espresso martini before that.
I love awesome. It. Cool. I love it. I'm looking forward to it.
It's gonna be fun. However, guys. Yeah.
However, if I can break in and get to some content here,
there's some serious business here. There's some serious business.
There is. It's been a big week, and I'm actually probably a little too excited to talk about two executive orders that came out of the White House this week on Tuesday, because I think they're actually really impactful to our industry. Do y'all mind if I skip from game day into content?
Trump signed executive orders.
I know. Even executive
flooding
orders,
the zone, man. Flooding the zone. But it is finally hitting our industry. I'm keen on this. Let's go.
It is. One of them is specific to federal acquisition regulation. The other is specific to defense acquisition.
Yep.
So on Tuesday, the White House signed or published both of these executive orders that I think could really redefine how the government's going to buy technology, or could. And so for startups like ours, it's really one of the signals we've been waiting for. So there's Executive Order 14198, and it directs agencies to stop defaulting to custom government unique solutions, and instead buy commercial products, including even modified commercial products whenever possible. Every solicitation for a non-commercial buy now has to go through an approval chain where there's required like documented market research and price analysis proving that commercial options won't work. That is huge. Yep. The other that applies to the whole federal acquisition regulation gives the FAR Council that oversees the federal acquisition regulation 180 days to strip out all non-essential regulations, meaning they have to take a 2,000-page, burdensome federal acquisition regulation document, and the way that I read this, essentially start over and probably try to make that a couple of 100 pages long. And that's also huge because that's also huge because anybody that's been in this industry knows for a while, FAR Part 15 makes things slow. Part 12 is largely ignored. Part 31 is really compliance heavy. So there's policy tailwinds here supporting faster paths that are in our favor. So
what we're talking about here isn't the programs like nuclear modernization, which is like a, you know, updating, upgrading the nuclear triad, all that stuff, because those are gov specific or gov unique solutions. You know, Joe Civilian is not building the nuclear triad in his or her backyard to sell a commercial alternative to those capabilities to the U.S. government, right? We're talking about the wide and growing array of commercially viable technologies that fully satisfy and answer capability requirements and gaps, but that already exist or could easily exist in the private sector without directed government bespokery.
Absolutely. And we see, I mean, I think we get frequently frustrated with some redundancy of effort when the federal government or the Department of Defense decides to invest in a thing that's already commercially available and spend government resources building a GOTS solution that takes much longer, often costs much more, as opposed to doing thorough market research and realizing there's already something commercially available or something that could easily be modified that's commercially available to solve that problem. And that's really the part of this, the outcome of this that I'm most interested in. Or one of the outcomes of this that I'm most interested in. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, Noah, you talk with hundreds to thousands of startup operators living in this kind of dual use or commercial first, or perhaps defense first, but dual use kind of space. I got to imagine you're hearing the complaint from the upstart community and from perhaps the government acquisitions folks that the status quo ain't working. Right? I mean, how does this thing hit you? Is this a positive move?
Well, you know why it's a BFD is Dave had a number. He didn't just say the recent executive. You know, when it's just another EO or something, it's you know, that EO. He had the number, the exact number. It's like, well, damn, sure that means he's locked and loaded. He's firing on target with that information all week. No, listen, Garrett, you're totally right. I think it was late last year. There were a couple of pieces in rapid succession. I think the Wall Street Journal did something, TechCrunch maybe did something, the Washington Post, all looking at, hey, of the percentage of new starts that are coming out of DoD, how many or what percentage are going to these like venture-backed startups? Mm-hmm. And it was tiny, right? I don't remember the exact. It was less than 1%. I think it was like something.
It's less than a 1/4%.
Yeah, it was.
Well, not only that, but companies like SpaceX dominate the total procurement dollars spent on so-called commercial technologies, right? And so even like, yeah, I don't know if that's an interesting dynamic in this mix, but I figure I'd throw the SpaceX wrench into your gears.
So we can, I mean, we'll get to, I think, big news today, Golden Dome. Yeah. We'll leave in a sec. I think, you know, just to close off on this one though, you know, even Dave, I think the thing that was interesting to me, even as we were talking about this previously, there've been a lot of EOs, even the software acquisition pathways memo a few weeks back that you guys have talked about on this show. Everybody's got the same question, which is like, does it have teeth? Is it for real? And I think what we've seen from this administration, whether you agree with them or not, this is not a political statement, is that their willingness to use tools of power that many others have not used before to accomplish their stated goals. They are willing to go farther than I think many administrations we've seen in recent memory in just like making sure the stuff that they say they're going to do happens. We got the university fights going on right now, the Harvard brouhaha, right? And so when you look at this, does it have teeth? And if so, what gives you confidence that it does?
Yeah, that's a great question, Noah. You know, is it enforceable? How well is it going to be enforced? Like, is it actually does it actually have sharp enough teeth to combat the entrenched sort of culture here? I mean, it says in pretty plain language, no, you have 180 days to give me a new FAR. That's it. You have 180 days, and you have, you know, I think it's 60 or 90 days to prove to me that you need to build a new thing that already exists through, and, you know, specifies the authorities that those where those decisions need to be made. So time will tell. I don't have a crystal ball on this one. I'm glad Simon's not on here because he would be very pessimistic, I'm sure, about the ability to
let us have
these
this
things.
for one day, Simon.
But I can take a win here. No, like I can take a win here just in the FAR, right? So let's say right now it's 2,000 pages, right? And we invaded. I think we invaded Normandy on, you know, an op order that was probably 100 pages plus some annexes. So even if the FAR becomes simplified, if you think about the value to me, like complexity the complexity of that document is the reason why we have like primes have these big compliance shops and DCAA and so on and so forth. That's a massive barrier to me in and of itself. Even if the FAR just becomes more simple, that's a huge win for VC-backed defense startups.
Can I ask a simpleton's question here? I don't know which of you is. You both will probably chime in on this, but this is going to betray some ignorance on my part. The FAR, is this a congressional action? In other words, an EO potentially only has a lifespan of the current administration, after which it could get rescinded or whatever by the succeeding administration. And so you could see legacy kind of incumbent players who essentially rely on the complexity and slowness of the FAR to insulate them from market forces. Just kind of like waiting it out, right? Let's ride this storm out. Let's wait. And then things will snap back into the same good old peace dividend economy that we got used to and fat on. Is an EO enough, in other words? Or to have staying power, to have the teeth that Noah's talking about, does it require congressional action?
Man, I think, no, unless you want to take, I really wish Simon was here. I think the way that it works, and Simon can come back and correct me, is that Congress passes laws that govern federal procurement like the FAR. But I think the executive branch in this case actually has a pretty significant role.
Do they own the FAR? I mean,
it's the implementation.
Yeah,
I think it's the implementation of those laws is actually within the executive branch. So in this case, the whole thing's maintained from the FAR Council. I'm actually not sure how that works, but I think in this case, the executive branch actually does have significant influence over the implementation of these laws.
That's probably why many of the legacy players are getting, to use the parlance of the day, doged so hard right now. And they are essentially the ones who are thinking that this is a real big tectonic plate shift in the industry, why they are trying to reconfigure their businesses. I mean, so many of these companies rely on these long-term, multi-year, stretch out the budget, stretch out the timeline, extend the POP, already T&E based projects where they end up with, a government bespoke solution, and inflate their market cap in publicly traded markets. I mean, they've got to be running scared. So anyway, I guess this is me saying I'm actually kind of positive on this.
I'm positive on it too, and I think to sort of wrap this up, it's not just the big guys that need to be changing how they do business. I actually would have specific. I'm excited enough about this. I actually have pretty clean specific recommendations for us and what our friends should be doing at the moment in the VC backed startup defense tech ecosystem. My humble recommendation is
So
the theme is the complexity. The complexity was the barrier. It's now being dismantled. Move fast. The door is opening right now. Push COTS product hard. Sometimes that's challenging in conversation. Now is the time. Flip the build versus buy conversation. Right. Remind any portion of your customer set that is building a competing internal architecture the preference towards COTS, even with some of these executive orders in hand, if necessary. Bid more COTS, double down on the dual use, right? For those of us that have been shying away, for those beings out there that have been shying away from defense tech and putting more chips in the commercial sector, I think now's a good time to put a few more chips in defense. Re-engage the old leads that told you no, the initial capabilities development document says that we're going to design a new thing and the government's going to own it. Use the EOs as I honestly will print them out and take them to meetings and say please explain to me why this is not how we're going to do business.
Well, maybe to weave in a thread that we haven't talked about in this context, but often I think is misrepresented to the market, is that the so-called new prime category, I'm talking about the Palantirs and the Andurils, the SpaceXs, the Shield AIs of the world. Most of those companies, maybe even all four of the ones that I just mentioned, Palantir does a lot of commercial business. I realize that, but certainly the other three, these are not dual use companies. Anduril builds military technology, right? And Palantir's defense business, well, I'm sure that it leverages commercially viable tools and it is dual use at some level. That's a company that beats its chest about killing terrorists or helping to kill terrorists, right? Shield AI doesn't build the next dating app that, oh, by the way, it can also be used for some austere defense purpose, right? So it's interesting to see the rise of so-called new primes competing for contracts against these legacy players who are going to be more impacted by this swing in the FAR through the EO than the upstarts will. But is this just maybe just a changing of the guard, and it's actually going to slide into a new grouping of incumbent legacy players, or is it something else? And what are the indicators that something like that is underway?
I'll start the conversation, but Garrett, you're gonna have to answer your own question there too. I'm gonna hold it because I want to hear your thought on that. I mean, sure. Here's I think there was somebody put something out last week and it really fired me up. It was somebody said something ridiculous like, isn't Palantir just a new defense prime? They have a big acquisition shop, or they play by the same rules. They still respond to RFPs or some nonsense like that. And It was man, I was very early days at a company that said, hey, we're going to change the way defense acquisition happens. Like, good luck, guys. Good luck. You're going to stop responding to RFPs that you've shaped. You're going to stop playing by the rules of the game. You're not going to abide by acquisition regulate. Like, what are we talking about here? Of course, you got to play it as it lies to take on the pole position. And then hopefully you kind of bring with a different kind of culture. And I think Shyam at Palantir has been really clear about this. And you'll see it now where Palantir and Anduril are teaming up on some stuff. There's the announcement today that SpaceX is headlining a team to go after this new missile defense Golden Dome project. We can talk about whether or not that's a good idea. But SpaceX headlining a team alongside Anduril and Palantir. Recent, introduction of another product studio called Valinor, kind of working on product problems that drop out from Palantir and Anduril's and General Catalyst's kind of work in the field. The culture of an organization that was built in 2015 or 2000, even for Palantir, 2007, 2008, or in Anduril's case, 2017 or 2016. The culture of an organization that came about then versus the culture of an organization that was built pre-Cold War, that's what you're betting on. I mean, I think what you have to believe is that modern software development and modern engineering practices are a better bet than legacy primes, disrupting themselves in terms of getting us to the future that we need. That's the theory of the case that I have. But please, that's my answer. What's yours?
I don't know that I've got a firm answer here, but I was reflecting on this topic a couple of days ago, and Greg Little of Palantir dropped this article called "The Last Supper," where traditional system integrators ate and missions starved. And it's this whole idea. I think that the analogy he draws is that the legacy SIs and primes are having their blockbuster moment in the context of a rising streaming platform like Netflix. And how they barely even see it coming, and all of a sudden it's gonna happen, right? And I think you're right. Like this is market Darwinism live and in our face in the defense technology ecosystem. I mean, this is eat or be eaten, innovate or die, and you're right to identify that the cultures of the kind of the new rising primes, that many of whom came up in Silicon Valley and hard tech and whatever else, not in government, not in government oriented businesses at all, but are now applying commercially viable, Darwin tested, Darwin approved, market activities to be resilient in the face of a market that's eating itself right now. And so I think this is simply a point of evolution in a recently hot and perhaps even heating up market around defense technology. And it's likely to continue to result in friction and pain for the incumbent and legacy players, and result in lots of weird kind of genetic mutations in the startup community, many of whom won't make it. And I think that's what's going on.
No, we're going to invite you back. You're such a nice guest to bring up a topic that directly aligns with the point that I was making. We've gotten hit.
Wait, you don't like it? You don't like it when Simon fights you on impulse?
I'm usually dicking it out with Simon, and Noah's like, "Yes, that's right. I actually know of something that directly aligns with the, with the current trend lines." And just for clarification, because we've gotten hit on the side a couple of times on acronyms that are not like, in everybody's lexicon. OTSP, other transaction solicitation process. So all that stuff that I was talking about with, that's the intent of these EOs. This is a very big project that is not based in federal acquisition regulation. That's what we're saying. Which is why it's more attractive to those organizations and why it's more plausible that the non-traditional set of contractors will be awarded.
Yeah.
Noah, we don't need to dig into this any more than you would like to, but you and I both have been a part of organizations that have come up and have suffered from those market Darwinism forces that we were talking about before. And like some make it, some don't. I do think that, what happens in that ecosystem is that a lot of venture capital money is deployed because it's only in those kind of nutrient rich, opportunity rich environments where, investors and the market can chase alpha and beta in the way that they like to. And so I think what we haven't talked about in any of these discussions, because it's hard to draw a direct line to it from the defense technology and upstart community, is how is a new Trump regime and its tariffs impacting our ecosystem? Because it's reconfiguring supply chains, certainly, mostly for the big macro environment, but I think what it actually means for this last supper redux dynamic, or the rise of the new defense prime contractors, or the evolution of the legacy however you want to think about this. There's a shit ton of venture capital coming into our ecosystem, but the Trump tariffs and the macro environment that is suffering from a lot of uncertainty right now actually does have a trickle down effect on our community, in that I think we talked about this in some amount of detail last week, but the VCs are likely to put their pencils down and stop investing maybe at the rate that they were last year, until there's some sort of renewed certainty in the market. But there's a countervailing pressure or force here. It's that defense and government markets are often seen as counter-cyclical to other macro trends. And so is this going to be an era when VCs generally are putting their pencils down because of macro market trends, but it still remains hot and even heavy in defense tech, the defense tech upstart community? I mean, you're seeing that firsthand because you're talking, Noah, you're talking about you're talking with founders and the dreamy-eyed visionary folks who are contributing to that piece of the ecosystem.
Right.
How do you see that trend line manifesting? I mean, is it heating up? Is it slowing down? Is it cooling off? Is it waiting? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the parlor talk of venture friend, are you how hard is it for you to raise your fund? Here's what I think should be exciting to people like us, and frankly, to anybody who holds American citizenship, is last week, I think it was actually, maybe it was just this Monday, the director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, Michael Kratsios at the White House, gave a really interesting speech. And not just because what Twitter's saying, which is that he said our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space, and Twitter blew up and said, oh my gosh, the Trump administration has solved time travel. It's like, well, maybe, but
not
that's
yet. Not yet.
Maybe, but that wasn't the message, right? The message, if you read his speech, the spirit of this, when we talk about kind of what is a new golden age of American innovation, ingenuity, industrialization, two things stood out. He gave two really, I think, compelling examples, which is that in many ways we froze technological progress in place on things that really mattered in the last number of decades. Nuclear is a clear example of this, right? There was a moment where we were building, I think it was 30 to 50 plus nuclear reactors, facilities around the country. And this was 30 years ago. And over the past 30 years, only 3 commercial reactors have actually been built. 10 have been closed. We've gone backwards. America has lost out on what was theoretically the greatest source of energy abundance ever known to mankind for whatever reason. Maybe it was safety, maybe it was just, NIMBYism, who knows? But the fact is, we lost out. And so if you're a clean energy person, if you're a climate tech person, how do you look in the mirror and say, I believe in these things, but not nuclear, not the cleanest source, not the most prolific source, right? Sure. Supersonic travel. or hypersonic travel. Right? The Concorde, we've been backsliding since the Concorde was retired. There has been no other attempt until now. Boom and Hermes and some of these others are finally in the last 5 to 10 years are finally starting to build on these technologies again. But we were just okay as a people, as a country, with our ability to travel and to support our needs going backwards. We were okay with that. We were okay freezing it in place. And I think when you see an administration that says, "Hey, look, we have the capability to do these things." We as a government, he had one line. He said, "The federal government must become an early adopter and avid promoter of American technology." That's interesting to me. I mean, there's always a little bit of cognitive dissonance where, one hand is maybe saying something different than another. That to me sounds like a fairly active role in the, in the economy. But here's how I look at it. Right now, we have a reckoning going on. You have this order around, hey, DOD and the federal government are going down on consulting services. Like, get consulting out. We're not spending money on this basket of things. R&D, it's like, well, we're actually only going to spend it in very specific ways. But I think for venture, it's the same thing. It's like, are you investing in a B2B SaaS platform that's just going to take 10 years to hit network effects? Or are you investing in something where there's a high degree of technical risk, where like the probability of failure is upwards of 50%? It's a big bet. It's Arthur Rock. It's liberation capital of top engineers working on really hard problems. And as an American, as somebody who cares, as something of a technologist, that's freaking exciting, man. Like that's where I come at it.
Well, I'm gonna try and I love that. I love that rant. No, thank
Sorry.
you. Sorry,
I'll leave my soapbox now, Dave.
I had to. I was standing up, and I had to sit down for that one. That was just really good. I'm gonna try and weave together a couple of ideas here. Our adversaries, whether you think of them as competitors or actual enemies or whatever else on that continuum, our adversaries are often command economy, planned, top-down, authoritative outfits. We're talking Chinese Communist Party, an authoritative or an authoritarian kleptocratic regime in Russia, and whatever the heck the theocrats and the egomaniacs in North Korea and Iran purport to be. But those places do things from a top-down, command-driven perspective, and they're very good. I think they're technocratic in their planning, and they're very good at harnessing in big, bold strokes an entire workforce or an economy. Think like China just deciding they want to go all in on X, Y, or Z technology. They can reduce all the barriers because it's single party state. They can do this stuff, right, at scale, right? I think as soon as the United States tries to compete in the same way with the same mechanisms, we're going to fail. In other words, if you have a government-led, government-sponsored set of initiatives, you're never going to outcompete the efficiency and the scale of a Chinese Communist Party and what that state can do. And so, because the United States came up with a libertarian-inflected, capitalist, free market kind of system, and it's a messy democracy, and it has lots of faults, and we are fixing ourselves, it's a continuous evolution. The strength of that is that it actually harnesses and then unleashes the ingenuity, creativity, and capital and resources that live in a distributed, decentralized way across the American population. And that's where we shine, right? We can do, and that's why I think this executive order, a set of executive orders, is so powerful, because it's saying government shouldn't do this. Commercial, dual-use technology, the market is going to deliver the thing. So long as we put out a demand, the market will deliver it. We don't need to be as authoritarian or as executive driven as perhaps other administrations or whatever American modernity has delivered to us. I think this is an important evolution. It could turn out catastrophically, but I think, I don't know if you guys share my optimism. I'm pretty damn optimistic.
I think that, Dave, I'll let you just two finger on this really quick. Garrett, that was extremely well said. And I think the point I would foot stomp is we cannot just emulate China to beat China. We cannot throw people at the problem to beat the vast, superior volume of Chinese people. We cannot we cannot birth a woke right to combat a woke left. Like, you cannot use the same mechanisms of power that you claim to dislike. So when you're, and frankly, when we talk, this is where the messaging gets muddled. If tariffs are to, quote unquote, bring back manufacturing jobs, that is a very different set of policies than saying we are going to manufacture those goods in the United States. Those are two different things, right? Listen to there's a bunch of podcasts that'll talk about e-commerce businesses right now. There are simply not Americans lining up to make socks and Nike shoes and, the memes of Chamath Aside in the sweatshop. That is not where the American workforce shines. Could it be? Sure. In some of those jobs, absolutely. Different kind of jobs. Automation is going to have to be a part of this. If we build factories back the way they looked in the 1970s, that is a massive squandered opportunity. And we frankly will still lose when inevitably, at some point in the future, when a Democratic administration comes into power and changes a large volume of these policies that they can do by writ, we're going to just be right back where we started.
As an aside, I visited, and this was going on 10 years ago, I visited one of the factories in Shenzhen, China, where DJI manufactures most of its, at that time, a certain DJI small drone product. They manufactured almost all of them in this single facility. We couldn't carry devices in there. We couldn't take pictures and all that stuff. I'm talking like multiple floors in a building that were football field in size, that had 5 to 10 people on each floor, and literally everything else in those facilities was automated. That's almost 10 years ago. I don't know that the United States has anything like that. And I mean, if there's one big explainer for why we're still behind after the billions of dollars of venture capital and government money that have been poured into the so-called American drone ecosystem, this is why we're still behind. We've refused to enable the automation in the manufacturing and the supply chain. And I don't think that's going to be a top-down exercise. I think the free market can deliver that with some nudges. So again, rant over. Dave, save us from my emotion.
I can probably button it up pretty neatly by saying I have very little to say about tariffs because I sell software, not semiconductors.
True.
Obviously, when my customers feel the squeeze, like, that has to come from somewhere. But I don't think I have much intelligence to say. And both of you had such a good rant that I'm not even going to try to meet it. I will say that, I agree with your optimism about the market being the answer here. I'll also say, that is part of our strength as the American, as the American military. Also, part of our strength is not top-down centralized authority, as you mentioned.
Yep, exactly.
And the reason that the Russian assault on Ukraine didn't last the planned 72 to 96 hours is because squad leaders and platoon sergeants are able to make decisions in the Ukrainian military. So I'm optimistic about the market being the answer, Garrett. I'm also optimistic, especially if it's in direct partnership with actual warfighters. Right? Yes. If a squad leader, a platoon sergeant needs a thing, the system is not built to hear them. But the reality is, with a good use case and the right commander, it should work. Let's not solve this top down. Let's make sure we're including bottom up in this new structure.
All right, hard pivot into end of show. And sorry for the abruptness of this. I cannot believe that in our pre-show, when I brought this up, you guys didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I'm going to see Sturgill Simpson tonight, and I don't understand why you two don't even know who he is. And I maybe this is just going to be a solo wind down in the show because you guys literally have nothing to say. But he's a great American musician. He's even an actor, and it's shocking to me. He's got some good stuff. He's got some kind of bad stuff too, but he's got some good stuff. And anyhow. That's what I'm doing tonight. And then I'm going to take a long sleep over the weekend. And then I'm going to show up to Apex Defense next week in National Harbor, Maryland, to get on stage with one Noah Sheinbaum and the Defense Gameday crew. I'm also speaking, just to put on everybody's radar who's listening or watching, I'm speaking the afternoon of 23 April at National Harbor at the Apex Defense event. It's, despite our spiciness on the topic of trade shows and events like this in the early part of the show, I do encourage you to come, if only to hold a lighter at the back of the field of people who are no doubt looking at their phones instead of the stage when I'm up there. But anyway, that's what's coming up in my life over the next week. What about you guys? What are you doing?
Shout out to the Apex. It's a good one. First year, I think the organizers are really trying to do something different. So we're appreciative. Look, it takes somebody willing to take a bet, and so the format's different, and everybody should take advantage. Get as much Garrett as you can. Love me some Garrett.
What else, Noah? What else is coming up? You've got Defense Gameday you're launching. Next week will be kind of the maiden voyage of this thing. What else is going on? Like, what else should we be looking for from you, and how do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Lots of stuff. We got Soft Week coming up. We got a new piece of content around that. We're going to follow a couple of companies as they game plan for how they're actually going to engage their customers. And then we'll do some live cut-ins and get the customer take on their approach and wrap it up with them. A lot of stuff I'm not ready just yet to talk about. But follow us, Front Door Defense, LinkedIn, Twitter, Crossing the Valley on YouTube. Actually, one thing you guys will be invited to that's exciting is Crossing the Valley is approaching its 50th episode, and so we're going to do a little celebration this summer, and I think this is important. It's part of the spirit of what we talked about up front. Is like, got to celebrate the wins. You guys have had some awesome wins. A number of companies I think just have come a long way in the last couple of years, and so we want to bring together companies like you guys, your government partners, because frankly you can't do it alone, right? So whether it's the end users, which is the champions, the customers with the money, bring everyone together and have celebrate a little bit, because I think this is a group of people that are, one, an incredible resource for others in the field, and two, have come a long way. And as Dave knows better than most, not every day is good, but the long arc of history bends towards progress, I think.
Well, speaking of that, my plans for next week are after you guys are wrapped up with Apex. I plan on meeting Garrett in Montana for opening an American defense manufacturing, can we call it that, capability?
Sure.
And American defense manufacturing capability in Bozeman, Montana, and doing a fundraiser for Warriors in Quiet Waters.
Yeah, great organization, worth giving a shout out. My old Marine boss and living legend, Colonel retired Brian Gilman, is the CEO of Warriors in Quiet Waters, charity that provides transition and programming for post 9/11 combat veterans. It's a dual purpose fundraiser plus headquarters launch party that we're hosting in Bozeman next week. So anybody who's listening is invited, and reach out and get in touch and get registered if you'd like to come. But it's going to be an awesome event. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. Okay, I think that's a wrap. Follow us on the socials. Give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're elsewhere. Send us notes. We want to continue to hammer on topics that are interesting for the broader community and grow the listener base. So, send us your ideas, and we'll check you out next time. See ya.